My name is James Tedrick. Along with me are Philip Wilson
Hi.
and Jody Liu. And this is Survey123 for ArcGIS, an introduction. This afternoon, as you would expect, we're going to introduce Survey123. We'll first provide an overview of the product, and then show how you can begin making your own surveys. So first authoring the surveys, then sharing them with the people who need to fill them out, and then third, looking at the data that you've collected and how we can make decisions from that. We'll wrap up, and we should have plenty of time for questions. We ask that if you have a question, please hold it towards the end. We promise we'll have time for questions, as well as we'll be around a little bit afterwards as well. I can
hear you fine. Your mic's not working, though.
My mic's not. No, so it isn't. Does this work now?
Johnny's this one, and then
Yeah, let's just.
I'll just use Johnny's.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, that better? My apologies. So, as I said, this is an introduction to Survey123. We'll cover what it is and how you can get started making forms, collecting the data, making decisions. As I said, please hold questions towards the end. We'll have plenty of time for them. We'll also be able to stay here a little bit afterwards and try to answer them, a little bit, maybe without as much amplification. Survey123 is concerned with forms. How many of you have a paper form somewhere in your work life? A lot of you. How many of you have a paper form somewhere in your home life? How many of you forgot that April 15th exists? Forms are everywhere. There's a form when you're born to fill out that birth certificate. There are taxes each year. And then there are forms that the mortuary fills out when you've passed away. So they are truly universal. Most of our forms are still actually paper forms that we take out into the field. And that can work. It also can be a problem if it's raining, and then also creates additional burdens and hassles for us once we have to take that paper back to the office and do something with it to make it work with the rest of our data. This is what Survey123 is concerned with making easier. It's a form-centric collection solution that exists in our devices, whether they're our phones, tablets, laptops, or even desktop computers. Using Survey123, we can actually turn these forms into smart forms. And I'll explain what that means in a minute. But it basically is designed to help us make the collection process easier. We as I mentioned, we support both mobile devices as well as laptops and desktops. We have both a web-based form solution as well as a native application that allows us to collect data. The web-based is great for being able to collect data, with any device, because every device, pretty much everything has a web browser. The native application allows us to go out into the field and do disconnected collection. It's an application that's built on top of the ArcGIS platform, whether you use ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. That means our data is going into the same enterprise geodatabase as the rest of your GIS data, and we can use the same GIS tools as the rest of your data to understand that and make decisions. As I mentioned, Survey123 creates what we call smart forms. Smart forms help us during the collection process in several ways. First, they reduce errors during the collection process. We're able to create constrained lists of choices. As an example, first time I saw this was in the 2010 Haiti earthquake. Haiti, as you're probably aware, is primarily a French Creole-based language. Has a French Creole-based language, and we were getting reports back on who were you receiving aid from: Red Cross, the U.S. Red Cross, Red Cross America, Red Cross France, Croix-Rouge Français. Those are anywhere from 2 to 3 different organizations that I just spelled out with 6 different options. Being able to standardize the choices and making it easy to know which one is which means that you're spending less time trying to deconflict the data. Also, we're using our devices to enter the data digitally the first time. That means that it can more easily go into your databases, and from there, go into your analysis workflows. We can also take advantage of the fact that these things are computers. We can have it calculate a response based on previous questions. For example, if we measure the diameter of a pipe and measure the water height, we could figure out the total cross-sectional area that the water is filling. That's a bit of trigonometry that I probably knew for a test back in high school, but I can't be relied to do that calculation perfectly in the field. As a survey author, I can look the formula up, input it into the form, and then just ask the person in the field to do the two measurements, the diameter and the height. We also have cameras on our phones. And so we can take photos while we're in the field and have those photos attached directly with the data. We don't need to print them out. We don't need to scan them. They're already attached to the data. As I mentioned, we're putting in the data digitally the first time and then transmitting it to our databases. This gives us near real-time cycles in between data submission, analysis, and feedback. You don't have to wait till the field crew comes back into the office, compile the form information, and then review. We can create information products like dashboards that look at the data in real time or near real time. Finally, with the field application, our data is georeferenced automatically, whether you're including a point on the survey or not. Sometimes that point matters. For example, the location of an asset. Sometimes it doesn't. We still are collecting the user's location when we collect the point, which provides us actually a level of geographic assurance that the person is roughly where they're supposed to be at the time that they're collecting it. They're not sitting in McDonald's, having a snack, and just typing into the phone. There are several customers who use Survey123, and I'm just going to show a few of the use cases that we actually have up and available via the Survey123 Resource Center. We've seen a lot of adoption amongst the non-government, the NGO, and nonprofit community. Organizations like World Health, who actually helped us pilot Survey123 with surveying polio vaccinations within Iraq. The American Red Cross, who uses Survey123 at several points within a disaster response, whether it's doing a preliminary damage assessment or working on shelter registration as people come in and need assistance. We also see organizations using it for inspections, like Gulfport Energy, which is a standard utility, looking at things like or natural resources, I should say, not utility, looking at their assets like pipes, pumps, and other facilities. The Oklahoma Department of Public Safety also has used this as part of their NDUI checkpoint. So their sheriffs are filling in local checkpoint information that gets aggregated up at the state level. And then we also have many utilities such as water such as Atascadero Water, who are using it for various parts of their operations, such as documenting chemical spill flows, or Prince George's County, which is asking volunteer groups to provide information about river cleanup activities that they're doing. Survey123, as I said, is a form-oriented collection solution. In particular, we're trying to make a basic workflow as easy as possible. And that is asking questions, getting answers, and then making decisions. The 1, 2, 3 of Survey123. To begin, and looking at how we can ask questions, let me turn it over to my colleague Jody.
Okay, thank you, James. So Survey123 has two great tools to make creating surveys easy. Firstly, we have the web designer that allows you to build smart forms directly in your web browser. It is easy to get started and provides a simple and clean interface. The web designer is great for simple surveys. Secondly, Survey123 Connect can be used to create more complex forms. Connect is a desktop tool that works with spreadsheet editor, such as the Microsoft Excel, and allows further customization and configuration of your survey. Using Connect, you can configure more advanced options. The web designer has an easy-to-use interface with a preview panel on the left, and on the right, we see the list of available questions for including in your survey. You can simply drag and drop the questions you want into the preview, configure the settings, and away you go. The web designer contains the most common questions you will need to create a complete survey. Question types include text questions, number, choices, date, time, ratings, as well as the ability to add geopoints, images, or files. This range of question types addresses the many workflows that most surveys are trying to solve. You can also set rules and apply conditional statements on questions. This will control the visibility of your questions depending on the answer to a previous question. For example, here you can see that if we have a question asking about, is this your first time shopping with us, and have either yes or no as the answer. And now you can set the rules to show the next question as how often do you shop with, only if the submitter choose no as the answer for the previous question. This is what the surveys will be looking like. Because it will make no sense to ask how often do you shop with us if you have already told me that this is your first time. These rules provide valuable options that help make it easier for the user to collect accurate data in the most efficient way. You can style your form by simply use our predefined themes, keep it the same as your organization settings, or import from an existing survey that are available to you. You can also make further customization after a selected theme by either ways. So now that you have created your survey using the web designer, it is likely that the first time you will not get exactly perfect. Maybe you will miss a few questions, maybe you want to change the orders of your questions, or maybe you just need to modify the labels and hints of your questions. The web designer allows you to make these common updates to your survey without affecting the underlying data that has been already collected. So now James will show you a live demo of the Survey123 website and the web designer.
Thank you, Jody. So I'm going to actually begin with my ArcGIS Online organization. Hopefully this homepage, well, maybe not the specific homepage, but something like it looks very familiar to you. You can easily find Survey123 at the app launcher here and open up Survey123. From there, you'll see a list of your forms, and you can see that I have a form here for this session. So I'm going to dive in and begin to design the form. I'm going to create a form that basically asks you some of your familiarity with Survey123, associated field operations, apps, as well as your familiarity with feature services. So to begin, I'll begin with a simple yes/no question. Yes, no, we can model as a single choice. The answer is either yes or no. I'm not going to allow maybe. Just to make things easier, I've already pre-written my questions here. And so I'll copy and paste, so you don't have to see me embarrassingly mistype things. Yes and no. So do you have some experience creating and using feature services? Just to make the form a little bit more compact, I can actually change the appearance here. And I'll do that by making it a horizontal appearance. So we can have some control over the layout. For choice questions, we also have support things such as a drop-down or an autocomplete, as well as Likert, which is a scale methodology used within the social sciences. Second question I'll ask is also a single choice question. And that is, do you have some experience using Survey123? And again, I can type in yes and no. I can do this, as opposed to doing it for each question, I can open up the batch editor, which will make each choice on the line its own choice. Now I'm going to ask, what is your experience level using Survey123? This is a question we don't need to ask everyone. If they've answered no to using Survey123, we already know what their experience level is. So first, let me begin by adding in the question. How would you evaluate your experience with Survey123? None, beginner, intermediate, advanced, or a ninja. As I said, this question, we don't need to ask it if you answer no to the previous question. So I'm going in here and setting a rule. If this question was answered yes, then show what is your experience level. The next question I'm going to ask is, which other ArcGIS field apps have you used? And as you can see, there are several of them. Some people may have only used one app. Many others have used many of them because we promote a multi-app workflow for our field operations. So we're going to make this a multiple choice question. So copy the text for the question and select multiple choice. I'll also copy the options that we have here and also paste those in. I also haven't included every app here. For example, ArcGIS Pro is missing. Also, if you've used our field applications for a while, you may notice ArcPad is missing. So to allow you to bring those in, I'm going to allow the other choice, which will then present a box to let us be able to fill those in. I can also say I put these out of order, so I just drag and drop and reorder our questions. The final question I'm going to ask is, where are you from? So I'll add a geopoint or a map question to the survey. Can set in the map type. And I can also just make that required so it'll load right up when we begin. And finally, set the home location. And that looks pretty good. So I've got my basic form here. One thing I may do, just to make things easy again, or make it a little shorter, is make that horizontal so it takes up less space. I can now preview this form. I can see that that experience level question is currently hidden. When I click yes, it appears. I can also get a preview of roughly how this would look on a mobile device or a tablet. I can go into the appearance and change some settings. So if I don't like the default background, I can easily select one of our other templates, or actually edit this and bring in my own custom color scheme into this form. This includes setting things like images for the background as well. I'll now publish this. And before publishing, I'll highlight that we can actually take a look at the table that we're creating. Up to now, we haven't directly interfaced with anything like a feature layer or a web map. That's because Survey123 allows you to build the form first, and based on those questions, we'll construct the table that automatically can store that data that is being submitted. So here I can see the proposed schema. I can change the field names. As well as values, if I wanted to. There's also some built-in logic that prevents us from doing some things like duplicating field names. So with my form created, or with my table schema proposed, I can publish, and that'll create the form with the table, with the feature table in my ArcGIS Online organization. With that, let me take it back to Phil, who's going to talk about another way we can publish forms.
All right, thanks, James. So now that we've had a look at creating a survey in Web Designer, we'll go through and have a look at what we can do with Survey123 Connect. So with Connect, you have complete control over your survey design, the defaults, calculations, the ability to use external choice lists, appearances, and set the field types, field lengths, and much, much more. So this does require a level of understanding of the XLSForm specification to really understand how the combinations of the different question types, properties, and how everything needs to be designed inside the Excel spreadsheet. However, this is all documented and is really easy to understand once you have a look. So we make use of a spreadsheet editor. The most popular one's probably Microsoft Excel, which most of you would have, and through that you can configure all of the questions and all the parts of your survey that you need to, and then you can preview it, and before publishing, make sure everything's set up right, and then publish it to your org. Connect is supported on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, and you can download it from the Survey123 website. So creating surveys with Connect is very easy and can be done in a few different ways. So firstly, you can create a survey from a basic or advanced template that we've provided through the Create New Survey interface. These two templates give you a very, I guess, a shell of a survey that just has all of the columns and all of the predefined lookups and things that you would need to be able to select the question types, appearances, and some of the other parts of the survey. However, if you're wanting to, I guess, find an example or understand how other surveys have been created, there's also some samples and community samples in the new survey dialog. And these have useful examples of how different types of questions have been used with different types of appearances and parameters, calculations for external devices, for many of the things that we support. So these are really good to get started, to sort of have a look, see a working survey, understand what parts you need, and then copy those things over into your survey. You can also copy from an existing survey. So if you've already have a survey that you've created or someone else might have created, you can find those in your organization, and then you can base your new survey from that existing one, and then just modify the things you need to make it fit the workflow you might be now creating. And for those of you that already have an existing feature service where you've got all the fields in a feature layer, and you simply just want to take those into a survey and then change the question labels, the hints, and add some other things, you can actually create it from an existing feature service, and it will populate the name and the required fields based on the information it can get from the feature service. And lastly, if you have an Excel file that you may have received from someone else, they might have emailed it to you, or you downloaded it from somewhere, you can just create a new survey directly on an existing Excel file, and that will just populate those fields into a new survey, and then off you go. So the XLSForm template, for those who haven't seen it before, contains 4 worksheets. The survey sheet will contain all of your survey questions, the labels, hints, parameters, and properties. The second sheet in there is a choices sheet, and that contains all of the lookup choices for the select one and select multiple questions. So those ones that James made in his survey in Web Designer before, very similar. Those choices will be kept in the choices sheet. The settings sheet defines all the title of your survey, the existing feature service, URL if you are using one, as well as some other basic settings to control the language of your survey if you're planning on using multiple languages or having your survey by default displayed in a different language. And then there are some other small settings in there. And with the type sheet, this is basically just a reference sheet, so it doesn't include any data for your survey or information that you configure, but it has all of the supported field types, appearances, expressions, and there are some reserved keywords that you can't use and special characters, so we list them all in there just as a reference. So having a quick look now at that first survey sheet, there are 3 columns. The first 3 columns in this survey worksheet are required, and these are the most important, I guess, columns when you're configuring your survey. So the first one is the type column, and that will contain the type of question that it is. So this is the field type. This could be text, integer, date, select one, image, or many of the supported ones. So with that, you would then add the name, and this will become the field name in the feature layer. So you basically have to use a name here that's supported in the feature layer, can't include certain special characters. You'll try and keep this as a simple name that your database will then reflect. And then lastly, the label column. This is your question as the user would see it. So this would be the longer typed out where you're answering your question, like James put in his fields in there, asking, have you used a feature service before? And this is the same as the alias when you're setting it in a feature layer. So the remaining columns from these 3 on to the right are all optional. And this is really where you configure all of the advanced configurations and properties for those questions. So you can have expressions, you can set them as read-only, required, you can add defaults, and change the appearance of how they look. So whether they, like the select ones, were vertical, horizontal, drop-downs, and then with some of the image questions you can add to change how they behave and how they look in the form. So Survey123 Connect provides an extensive list of question types, as I mentioned before, and many of those are very similar to Web Designer. So as we saw in the Web Designer before, we had a large range of question types, and we try to make these as much as possible be supported in both. There are some additional question types that you do get with Connect, and that's because you're going to be using it in the field app on a device, in an application, not just a web browser. So things like barcodes, signatures, and other things that can really help make it a useful field app on a device. You can also then apply all of the default values calculations, as I mentioned, and some other things there are groups and repeats. So we have a group question type, which will allow you to group questions into groups, and also repeats, which will allow you to have a related table where you can have, I guess, multiple related records to the parent record and set that up all from within Connect. And when you publish it, it will create those relationships and the related tables, as well as images and audio. Yeah. And one of the other things, is with the images, audio and signatures, you get a lot of media. So you can preload media with your survey that you may reference in the survey, where you would put sort of images and other things that can help the user understand the question that they're answering. So having a look at publishing surveys in Connect, very similar to the Web Designer, we have a preview. And then you can publish your survey from Connect to either ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. So no matter which sort of solution you're currently using, you will be able to create new surveys and publish them. And then you have the ability to share them to either the users in your org, a group in your organization, or you can even make them public. And this is all done via the Survey123 website. So whilst you handle the publishing in Connect, once you want to share it or use some of these other advanced settings and things that we can manage with our survey once it's in your org. For either Web Designer or Connect surveys, you'll manage that from the website. And I guess, similar to the Web Designer, you can also go back into Connect after you've published it, and you can modify certain things, change question labels, hints, calculations, all those sorts of things, and republish a survey. Provided you don't make any major schema changes, you can sort of continue to fine-tune your survey from Connect and republish it. So now James is going to give us a quick demo of creating a survey from Connect.
Thanks, Phil. So here you see that I have my Survey123 Connect open with a form that's very similar to the one I just created on the website. You'll see a few differences. Most notably, you'll see that I've got the icons for the applications on the form, because most of us actually see the icons much more often than we actually see the names of the application. So it's a little bit easier to identify which ones you actually use. I also have a multilingual survey. So this survey is written in both English, Chinese, as well as Spanish. And if I had my phone set with either Spanish or Chinese as the language, it would actually default to that language instead of English. Over here on the right, or on the left, I have my XLS form. As Phil mentioned, this is a Microsoft Excel worksheet with 4 specific tabs: survey, choices, settings, and types. The survey is the list of questions. You can see the experience with feature services, experience using Survey123, the experience level, other field apps, a place to enter another application, as well as the where are you from. I can go in and add in an additional question or statement, such as a note, which is basically just a block of text for us to be able to read. Save that. And Survey123 Connect is automatically monitoring for changes in my Excel file and then updates the form preview automatically. We also have a couple of different layouts to preview, whether a smartphone, a laptop, or a tablet. Or if I just really want to see the form as much as possible, I can just fit it on the screen. To support the multilingual survey, you'll see that we have additional label columns. So the label is the human-readable information for the question. And you see I have the information for English, Spanish, and Chinese, each one distinguished by the language code. I also have hint information for the last question here. And I also have the appearance of the questions laid out. So you can see that as opposed to setting it in a checkbox, I simply declare that this will be a horizontal question to get a horizontal layout, or a Likert question for the Likert layout. And the equivalent of the rule that I created in Survey123 is this relevant column. Relevant is basically whether to show this question in the survey or not and get an answer. And so I can see that when the experience with Survey123 question is answered yes, we'll show the what is your experience level question. Coming over to the choices, you can see that I have my list of choices here on this choices tab. And again, in order to support a multilingual survey, we've got English, Spanish, and Chinese labels. Also, to support the images, we have the images, again, in those languages, because images sometimes will have text embedded within them, and so they might be a translatable resource. These all live in a folder with the Excel file, as well as things such as the survey's thumbnail and the icons for the images. I can go and publish this, and you can see that there's perhaps an issue with that. So I'll stop publishing from now, and then be able to work on that a little bit later. With that, I'd like to turn it back and look how we can then use this form and collect data with it.
Okay, thanks, James. So the next important step in creating a survey is about sharing your survey. For example, will it be a private or public survey or just shared to a group? Here are some key points of the differences. For private surveys, they're shared with a well-known group of users, which means it's secured access. It will require use of one ArcGIS account per every field user, and it will enable editor tracking capabilities ultimately. The private surveys are ideal for sensitive data or when you want to understand who is doing what. On the other hand, the public surveys are shared with everyone. There's no need for ArcGIS accounts. Anyone can submit data. The public surveys are ideal for crowdsourcing initiatives. Once your survey is published, you have complete control over the sharing of the survey. This is done on the Collaborate tab on the Survey123 website. The submitter settings allows you to set who can submit data, meaning who you are allowing to collect data using your survey. The options here are everyone, all members of your ArcGIS organization, or just members in one of your ArcGIS groups. Similar for submitters, you can set the same for viewers. These settings can make the results public or private for viewing. Viewers can access the Analysts and Data tab, as well as print survey reports via the Survey123 website. But you will likely have different groups for submitters and viewers. You can set the survey status to open or closed to submitters, or set a scheduled time period by providing start and end time. In the survey closed dialog, you can also add your own text, own images, or links describing to survey takers why responses are not being accepted. You can also control how many times the same survey taker can submit to the survey to avoid multiple submissions. So when you create a new survey using the Web Designer or Connect, the required items will be created in a new folder in your account. This folder will be named Survey- and the name of your survey. By default, you will see 3 items in this folder: a form item, which contains the survey file, a feature layer, which is used to store the data, and a field worker. This field worker view is used when sharing your survey to users for collecting data. If you also decide to share your survey to viewers, such as the managerial group in your organization, then you will also see a stakeholder view in your survey folder. You need to always remember only modify these settings via the Survey123 website, and do not try to modify these items via ArcGIS Online. As there are multiple ways to collect data using Survey123, we need to make it easier for the users to find the survey that they need to open. If required, you can provide a simple-to-use survey link in the form of a URL, which will allow them to either open the survey directly in a web browser or directly in the mobile app. Alternatively, you can give the users the option to select which input type they prefer to use if they are on a device that supports both, such as an iPhone or an Android device. You can generate embed HTML codes for the web form and put it in your existing website, meaning that you can have people who access your website see the web form on the same page without having to open a new window or tab. This can help bringing your survey to the forefront and making it more accessible and easy to find. Head to you, Phil. Yep.
That's right, I've got you. Thanks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thanks, Jody. The next step in the Survey123 workflow is getting answers. So this is all about, capturing and collecting the data that you've set up for your surveys and ready to get it in. So this can be done, as we've mentioned already, whether that's done via the field app or via the web app. And it can also be done online and offline. So web forms are a great way to easily and quickly capture data in a web browser without users having to install an app or download a survey. They can simply access that survey via the web browser that they may have on their computer or on a mobile device. And we have a wide variety of supported operating systems in both desktop and mobiles. Web forms, as Jody mentioned, can be embedded into your existing website. So that means you can have people just access these surveys directly on your website without having to open another tab or another window to access it. So this can really help bring your survey sort of to the front and make it very easy to capture new data. So web forms are now supported for both new capture, so adding new data, as well as editing existing data, and this is done via URL parameters. This makes web forms a very powerful tool because you can have users collect new surveys, but then you can also send them a link which allows them to click on that link and open it up in an editing mode, and they can edit a survey that they may have created previously, or have someone else edit it in a different workflow where it's gone to someone else. So yeah, as mentioned before, with that, with crowdsourcing and sharing your survey the right way, they become a very powerful way to collect information. So the other way you can collect data using Survey123 is using the mobile app. And this is great for collecting data in the field where you have a set of mobile devices, they have the app downloaded, they download the surveys they need, and then they can go offline into the field and they can collect all the information that you require. And this is obviously ideal when they can't use the web form because they don't have internet access or they're in an area where that's just not possible. So the mobile app can be used for capturing new surveys, supports editing existing data, and as well as with that, the additional support for things such as high accuracy GPS and doing the signature camera and all the other barcode scanning that you would get with the mobile app. You can also use the inbox for the editing of existing records, and this is where you can pre-configure to be able to query the existing features that are in your feature layer and download them to the device, take those surveys offline, and then have your users edit them, and then when they're back online, they can upload those existing edited surveys. The Survey123 mobile app is a cross-platform app and is available on iOS, Android, Windows, macOS and Linux. So as I mentioned just then, we now have support for GNSS, high accuracy receivers, for most of you probably known as GPS devices. And this allows users to collect high accuracy location data for their selected location and geopoint that they're collecting in the field. And with this, you have the ability to store additional metadata that comes with high accuracy receivers. So most of them will give you a lot of extra information additional to just your X and Y location. And you can store that in the survey, whether it's visible to the user or just hidden in some hidden fields behind the scenes. But you can capture all the accuracy, vertical and horizontal accuracy, if you're using some other things, you want to know the speed, or there's a multitude of other properties that you get when you collect a point with a high accuracy. So this is great. You can then build validation rules and have sort of error checking as part of your collection and ensure that the point they collect is very accurate if that receiver supports it. As well as external GPS devices, we also support some other external devices such as the Spike rangefinder. This is a device that uses the camera and a rangefinder and enables you to take a photo of something at a distance and then measure lengths and widths and heights and calculate the area of an object that you can't make it to measure yourself. This data is then collected in the Spike app, which is launched when you use Survey, and then it passes the data back into Survey123 as well as the image it took, and these can pre-populate fields that you've got in your survey. So this is a really powerful tool if you've got a workflow like that where you need to use and measure things at a distance. Spike has or ArcGIS, the makers of the Spike device, they do have a booth downstairs, so if you do want to go see them and find out more information about this. We also have a sample for the Spike as well as GNSS and some of these other things in Connect if you want to see how we have pre-configured some forms. So now we're going to take a look at a demo of sharing these forms and actually collecting data with Survey123.
Thanks, Phil. So I've come back to the Survey123 homepage where I see my list of surveys. I have that survey that I showed you in Survey123 Connect here at the top as I recently republished it. And I'll go into the Collaborate page. As Jody mentioned, we have two types of roles, essentially, within Survey123. Submitters, people who can contribute data to the form, and viewers, people who can see the results of the form in a read-only context. For this, I'm going to focus on the submitters. You can see that I have a link to provide if I needed to email out information on the form, and I can choose whether to have the user open it in the web form, in the field app, or have it be their call. Currently, you can see that no one has access to our survey. Sharing in Survey123 works the same as sharing within ArcGIS Online. We can choose to share it to a group or to the organization, both of which requires you to sign in to be able to access the form. Or I can share it to everyone so that it's available for anonymous access. This is very useful in a crowdsourcing or a citizen science type of a collection activity. I also can choose what people can do with the survey, with the feature service. In this case, they can only add new records. They can't go in and revise the records that they've already submitted. I've also set it to allow only one submission per device. And you can see that the survey is currently closed. To actually engage with collection, I can open it up. I'll save. And now that it's been opened and it's available to everyone, I can do something such as open the link directly. And you can see that I've already submitted the survey, so I can't submit another one. Or I could ask you to submit a survey by letting you scan this QR code. So if you have an iOS device, your camera application should be able to see the QR code. If you have an Android device, you may have it in your camera application. You may have it in your browser or a separate application. But I invite you here to please open up the form, fill out a survey, and then we'll see the results in a little bit. And just to show this process for those of you who don't have a camera or don't have a phone available, let me switch to my own mobile device and the camera application. Give you guys one more chance to scan the barcode as I scan the barcode. Ready? I'm going to now open it in Safari. And I'll open it in the browser. And I'll fill it in. I have some experience there. Why, yes, I do have experience using Survey123. I've also used several of these other applications. And way back in the past, I may have used something called ArcPad. Anybody else there, ArcPad? A few little hands? OK. And just for convenience, I'm actually going to use my current location versus, whoa, that is not my current location. OK. It helps if I don't cancel out of things and say yes. So I'll now submit. So it's submitting my information as you all had your information submitted. And we'll be able to see the results of that in a very short while. But first, I'll have Jody talk about what we can do with the data.
OK, thanks, James. Now that we have covered step 1 and 2 in the workflow, the last step is making decisions. This means making use of viewing and analyzing your collected data. The Survey123 website has ready-to-use reporting tools, allowing you to analyze, tabulate, and view on a map your collected surveys and associated data. You can even download your data into different export formats. All of these features make viewing and analyzing your collected data easy, professional, and efficient, and will provide important tools to make important decisions in your organization. With our official release of the feature report capability just before UC, you can get printable documents with your survey data by providing customized report templates in Microsoft Word format. You can define the contents and the look and the feel of your reports in the templates. Just like other ArcGIS apps and tools available from Esri, Survey123 makes use of a standard hosted feature service hosted in either ArcGIS Online or Enterprise, which means the data collected via the web form or mobile app is in a standard recognized format and stored alongside all your other valuable features. Other apps such as Pro, Insights, Web App Builder, Operations Dashboard, and Story Maps can all be used to interact with the data you collected with Survey123, and therefore easily display and analyze the data in the same way you would with any information in your ArcGIS organization. So now let's take a look at the Survey123 website and how it can be used to analyze and review the data. Over to you again, James.
Thank you, Jody. So once again, I'm back at my Survey123 homepage, and I can see the results of my survey. Now, you guys didn't all submit 134. We did have about 70 or so submitted yesterday in our other session. But we have a total of 134, and I can go in and take a look at how that submission occurred. So we can see that we were doing a little bit of a test run around the 5th, And then yesterday, during our first session, we had 72 submissions, and today, 61. And I can see who submitted the information. I can go over to the Analyze page, and I can have a question-by-question breakdown of the responses. I'm actually also going to filter that just to show the ones that were created today. That today is the 10th. And apply. And I can see that about 45% of the submissions were from this session. I can see, as I said, a question-by-question breakdown of our, of the responses. So many of you have experience using feature services. I could even see the map, where the red points are those who do have experience, and the blue points are those who do not. You can go through, take a look at the distribution of beginner, intermediate, and one ninja. So I guess I'm the only ninja around today. See the other field apps that have been used. Web App Builder and Collector are very strong. And then I can show the other response and see ArcPad, ArcGIS Pro, ArcSpacePad, and story maps. And this also shows some of the reason why we like constrained choice lists, because sometimes it's ArcSpacePad or ArcPad. Yesterday we had ArcGIS Pro /ArcMap and ArcMap /ArcGIS Pro. So constrained choice list would have resolved those double answers into two of the same answer. Going over to our data page, I can now view an individual submission. Take a look at what they responded and where they're from. Again, I have the filtering option. I also have the ability to generate that feature report, that printable Word document based on this survey submission. So I have a template. It's been basically sized for a 3x5 card, so I can print it out on a compact card and file it away in a shoebox. And generate. And it'll begin that task. Meanwhile, I can also export this data, either just that record or all of this data, in a variety of formats. And I can open this feature service in the map viewer. This is a standard ArcGIS Online feature service and works with the other applications, such as the map viewer, operations dashboard, web app builder, whatever you need to work with it. Just to show, I have that printable document now. Come on, Word, open up. Word's a little sleepy. I should have opened up beforehand. Yeah, it'll get there. Ah, there we go. And I've got the document printed out. I can see that they used feature services. They haven't used Survey123, but they have used Collector, Explorer, and Web App Builder. So that completes, yeah, come on, there we go. So that completes our tour of Survey123. Hopefully we've introduced it to you and shown you some of the ways it's being used. We've also shown how you can get started making your forms, going out and collecting the data, and getting the answers, and making decisions from the answers. The Survey123, in order to get further started with Survey123, we encourage you to visit the Survey123 Resource Center. You can look for that either through the help of Survey123 or from Esri's product page for Survey123. It has links to our help documentation, about 24 videos on YouTube to help you get started creating forms and working with Survey123, as well as to our GeoNet community. Our GeoNet community is very active. If you have questions about Survey123, I encourage you to go there and ask questions. Ourselves, as well as our users, are there ready to answer them. Just as a heads up, tomorrow we've got 2 final sessions on Survey123. One is advanced topics at 1 o'clock, and the second is extending Survey123. Just as a reminder, if you enjoyed this, please review us inside the Esri Events app. If you didn't, you're free to skip that. And with that, I thank you for your time. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free. Yes?
You express how to generate a unique label for a record derived from maybe answers or values?
Sure. So the question is, how can we derive a unique label from the answers or values of the form?
Or unique ID?
Our unique ID. So there's a couple of aspects to that. One, Survey123 uses global IDs. So a unique ID in the computer sense is submitted with every record in Survey123. From the human sense, in some terms of something we can actually understand, we have support. There's a property called the instance name. And that basically works as the label. You create a little function that says, get me the information that was posted by as the subject name for the record, as well as maybe provide me the username who submitted it, as well as maybe provide me the date and time that I submitted it on. So that can be very customized to your collection process. Again, the keyword for that to look for would be instance name. And we have a blog post, for example, in our GeoNet community. It's also within the Survey123 help documentation. We'd be very happy to show you downstairs at the expo, either this evening or tomorrow while the expo is open. Yeah. Yes.
Is there an option to, instead of collecting a point, maybe have the user select like a route, and how might I do that?
So the question is, rather than just collecting a point, can we have the user collect something like a route? A route is a linear feature. It might occasionally be a polygon if it's a route to itself again. Survey123 has support for collection of lines and polygons currently in beta. We anticipate to release that with our next release of Survey123 in mid-September. If you're interested in trying this out, we would encourage you to go to our beta community. You can get to that by bit.ly, bit.ly/S123 beta lowercase. We also are very happy to show you the early adopter community downstairs in the Expo Center to get started as well. Yes?
If multiple people are responding to a survey and they are in, let's say, a 5-story building and they're in the same location with different Zs, does that measure it in meters when it responds?
So the question is, if I have multiple people in the same horizontal environment, but at different vertical separations. Survey123, optionally, you can specify to collect a Z point versus just a 2D point. And that will record the altitude based on the phone device's information in meters. Yeah.
If you had allowed people to click the button where you allowed them to update a record, how does that process work? Does the URL come straight to them when they do the initial survey?
So the question is, if I allowed a user to update a record, how would they get around to actually updating it? There are a couple of ways to do that. Survey123's field app supports something called the inbox, which is where we can list the records that we want to have edited or updated, and then the user could select from those and then proceed to update. The web form now supports a URL parameter to say that I want to open up Survey123 for editing, and then I want to, in particular, open up a specific record. So you would end up generating a URL, and we can talk maybe about ways we can do that offline. But you can basically, if you set up a way to say, open up this record in the form for editing. We actually had one of our users at our special interest group yesterday show how she integrated that inside of Operations Dashboard, so that they clicked a record in Operations Dashboard, and it opened up inside a little embedded pane there, the survey information for editing. And in the back, this probably is the last question.
So you offer 2 options as far as sharing your survey. One of them is crowdsourcing, and then the other one is for members of my organization. However, if we want to have it like controlled, is there a way to have that like selective crowdsourcing? So for example, like my facilities, I want them to have that, but they don't have access to ArcGIS.
Sure. Yeah, so the question is, I want to source it to the crowd, but not all the crowd, essentially. So I have a trusted set of users who I may have had vetted. They're not ArcGIS users. They don't have any accounts or anything like that. How can I restrict the survey to them? The best way to approach that is to use ArcGIS Hub. Hub is designed for this larger community engagement scenario. So, if you're not familiar with it, the Hub, when you enable ArcGIS Hub, you can get essentially what's called a community organization. And you can have users log in via their Facebook or their social media accounts and be able to essentially have a ArcGIS user without really needing to worry about the GIS stuff. It's just, they connect in with you via the Hub. You can share a survey out through the Hub, and that's how we can get that known community scenario worked. So in terms of more documentation, I encourage you to look for ArcGIS Hub in the sessions list. The Hub team also has a presence down in the center back of the expo area where we can talk through that as well. Okay, and again, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.